You know, and that's so fascinating because as I think about what's happening in corporate America today, there's such a great thirst and drive for innovation
Absolutely.
and learning and the whole idea of generative learning, which you talk
Absolutely.
about a
Yep,
lot, and
yep,
the concept
yep.
of how do we actually engage employees in a way that we get better performance. And I think what a lot of companies are still struggling with is engagement seems to be management, but to be engaged, to engage people, you have to be engaging. And this is what you're
Yeah,
talking about.
absolutely.
A lot of that same
Yeah.
type of thinking of what affects a system and one's ability to really be creative or to learn or explore and to be judged by something different than a mechanical process.
Well, you know what that triggered is when I mentioned before about this chasm between the kind of environment that we know best fosters innovative thinking and divergent thinking and creative thinking and creative problem solving. Where that's replicated, or a great model for that, is in gaming. Now, we may have some concerns about some of the video games and games that kids are playing, but I served for 2 years on the board of an organization in New York called Games for Change, and it was games for social good. It was using this medium of gaming as a way to immerse kids, because they love to play games, in solving problems that really impact the world or impact regions of the world, and solving real world problems. But when you look at the principles of gaming, when I talk to the people who are really designing games, if you did not know they were game designers, you would think they were neuroscientists, because they take the principles of learning,
Wow.
which says that IQ is not, there is no such thing as an IQ. Our potential is not fixed and it's not finite. The brain is not a blank slate. We are not immutably hardwired. That's why we talk about neuroplasticity. We also talk about self-directed neuroplasticity. So in gaming, it's high challenge, but it's not threat, because we know that the brain is attracted to challenge, but it literally downshifts into threat. There is a sense of agency, there's a sense of purpose, there's a sense of real collaboration in gaming. So I was struck when I looked at the principles of game design and put them next to the principles of learning to say, no wonder kids are so attracted not only to these generative technologies where they're collaborating and solving problems together, but also gaming, because they're authentic, they're real, and they really draw kids in very authentic ways. And that we have to be so mindful of that when we're creating not only learning environments, but when we're creating work environments, because these kids leave school and they go to the corporate sector, and they come with expectations of how they have worked and learned and collaborated and solved problems before.
Yeah, and there are so many things I want to ask you
I know,
based on
I know,
that, so
I
I have
know.
to really be careful. But you know, one of the things that really strikes me, and we talk about kids, and there's so much work right now, of course, around the next generations coming up and why we need to change. But there's so much that's true for us too, right?
Absolutely.
That there are many of us who wouldn't let our wings be clipped, or wouldn't be in that box,
that's right.
or weren't gonna, be judged by someone we didn't feel worthy of judging. And it's really amazing as you talk about that whole way of enticing people to learn versus shoving something. It's like shoving the goose, or stuffing the goose for foie gras or something.
Right.
that they're very different types of processes.
Well, because they're also grounded on two very different philosophies. And a shoving is grounded in a philosophy that the brain is a blank slate. Very often you would see pictures of half the head cut off and it's opened and the teacher is pouring in stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we really don't have to be enticed to learn. You look at a kindergarten kid, you don't have to entice them to learn anything. They are natural learners. What happens, in my view, is that the system has so calcified through its structures and processes the way learning is, quote, supposed to be, and therefore does not look at individual learners. So people like us, who maybe did not fit because we were viewed as radical or outside of the norm or always perturbing or always provoking. That's an awful thing to do to a kid, because then they feel different because they don't fit into this design or this place. The new model, beyond the construct of its new story, which is all about abundant potentials, it's all about a plastic brain, it's all about the fact that we can shape our own brains through thinking and through skill development. Every time we learn a new skill, every time we practice, we are in fact rewiring our brain. The more we rewire, the more connections that are there, the more adaptive, flexible, and quote, smart we become, because many things will then trigger a memory in a brain rather than just one. So if we, if we want to apply that to learning and to corporations, part of what has shifted, a mind shift about education now, has been perturbed by the advances in learning sciences and the advances in neuroscience. I mean, as a thoughtful educator, you cannot read the research or the literature about this is what we used to think about the brain. We had a single IQ, the brain was fixed, it was a blank slate, nothing you could do to make you smarter. Yeah. You were doomed by your DNA, didn't matter. You were good in math or you were not good in math. You were good in science or you were not good in science. That's just who you were. Well, that's false. It's just not true. It's not that people don't have predispositions, but with learning and practice and immersion, we can do a tremendous amount to wire different cortical connections in our brain. So that new story came from real research. Yep. And when you begin to think about that, you cannot hold, or let's say it's very difficult to hold, and it's dishonest to hold, that erroneous worldview. So the mind shift comes from the fact that the facts have simply changed.